Hey, it's Broken Office Chair, a podcast produced by Alternatives. Broken Office Chair is hosted by Alternatives Executive Director Bessie Alcantara. Bessie is a Chicago native, first-generation Salvadoran Mexican-American who's passionate about dismantling systemic racism. In each episode, Bessie will be joined by her friends and colleagues who are ready to speak candidly about their experiences as people of color in their various professions. In the episodes, they'll address topics such as issues in the nonprofit sector, racial equity, DEI in practice, and much, much more.
Welcome to Broken Office Chair. Today, we're going over a new segment where we are giving advice on issues that were written into us. And the guest today is Vu Le, who is going to help us troubleshoot these issues. You excited?
Hey, Bessie, I'm very excited because I like the sound of my voice through these microphones. I think I sound really sexy right now.
Wait, what were the sexy things you were saying earlier?
Oh, yeah. Multi-year general operating funds.
I'm dead. Okay.
Unrestricted funds.
Wait, hold on. Let me not laugh so people can purely enjoy what it is that you're saying. It's like what's it called? ASMR?
ASMR, yeah. We got some leftover hummus at the end of the board meeting.
You ready?
Here's some new Pentaflex files.
I don't think he can answer letters today. I think he's enjoying the mic a little too much. All right. So let me read us our first one. Do you want to read them, actually, since you're enjoying the sound of your voice?
No. It needs to be used sparingly.
Sparingly. All right. I was on my way to a funder meeting with another director when she pointed to my outfit and told me I really should be wearing a dress or a skirt, not the slacks I had picked out. This is not my first time my outfit has been scrutinized and deemed unacceptable to my peers or superiors, usually older boomers. For a reference, I'm a millennial. What the hell? I know how to dress myself, and I don't believe that archaic gender expectations of clothing should still dictate how I perform at work. How should I have responded?
Yeah, how would you respond, Bessie?
How would I respond?
Oh, yeah.
I've never been good at being told what to wear at work, personally. I think I actually would have said just that.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm qualified to answer this because I shop at Ross Dress for Less and I get these shirts. And I think it's way easier for men, right? We just put on whatever.
I absolutely think it's way easier for men.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even comb my hair most of the time. I just throw on whatever shirt that is relatively clean. And yeah, so I don't know. I think that this expectation, this gender dynamics here regarding dress codes, that's something that we need to scrutinize because it seems extremely archaic and inappropriate.
Yeah. No, and I've actually seen it quite a bit with expectations around women not wearing things that are tighter fitting if you're curvier because, that's inappropriate, which tends to be women of color or but also I want to add that this starts as a really young age too, with schools saying like you can't have your shoulders out, you can't have too short shorts because it's distracting. So this idea that women have to dress a certain way to avoid distracting others from being able to do their job.
That is ridiculous. And we need to get over it. Right? This is not like the 1950s anymore. And yeah, I don't know. It just seems really gross when the majority of fundraisers are women, and a lot of the clients and donors are wealthy older men, probably in many cases.
Yeah,
and sexual harassment has been a huge issue in fundraising in the nonprofit sector, and so I think we need to be more conscientious about like not regulating or not perpetuating this idea of these gender roles and dynamics here.
Let me ask you a different question. How would you handle, this has actually happened to me, how would you handle if another employee complained about that person's attire?
I think we should be thoughtful about right? Because sometimes people can, like it's I don't know what I'm saying. Like this.
Yeah, because you have somebody who's like, hey, I think this is really unprofessional that they showed up dressed this way to work. They should have worn A, B, and C.
Yeah. I do think that there's certain limits. I feel like there's, if, there's, sometimes I see people, I'm like, what are you wearing? Like if, like.
But what's the line too? I think like for me, the line is like, I don't even know sometimes where the line is. I'm like, don't offend our partners is usually my line. Don't offend, because we have a lot of school-based services. Don't offend our principals. But I usually don't care what people wear. But I have had folks complain about what people wear. Typically, I've actually had this type of incident with an employee where somebody we were working with thought the person was not dressed professionally enough. And I was like, the person looked fine to me. Like, I just don't think appearance has anything to do with work competence. So,
yeah, we definitely need to like redefine professionalism, because there's some very archaic Victorian era rules and parameters regarding what is professional. And that has changed. Like, I mean, we think about tattoos, for example. Like, I don't care if you have tattoos, as long as you can do your job. I know people have had issues with people dyeing their hair a natural color, right? Like, in quotes, a natural colors like blue or mermaid or unicorn color or whatever. And I don't know. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. I've also been called brave for having a nose piercing, because before, I think when even like 5-10 years ago, it was so unacceptable to have facial piercings in the workplace.
Yeah, that is interesting. Things have changed a bit. I don't know. I guess for me, like when I was working with youth after school programs, you know, like sometimes the staff during the summer would dress in very short clothing, shorts, tank tops, and so on. And some of the parents were more conservative, and they complained. So that's something you kind of have to balance out. Like, how do you? They're like, we don't want our kids exposed to this. So I don't know. I think just having an honest conversation about what is appropriate, it's like the yes and.
Yeah, the yes and that we talked about earlier today. So I think for this person, one of the things they could have asked, like, what is their definition of like the appropriate work, I'm putting in quotations, work type of response, not to ruffle feathers, could be like, what is appropriate and why? Like, how did that dress code come into play? Is there any room for it within it? But personally, I've never been one to like shy away from ruffling feathers. So I would have just been like, that's archaic. That's bullshit, basically.
Yeah, it is very interesting how in the United States we have certain hang-ups about things, but not other things. Like, this person might be less offended if someone just brought in a gun or something, right? Or in a holster. You'd be fine with it. But if it's too skimpy, they're like, oh, no, that's terrible.
It also seems like it wasn't like the person had on slacks. They just wanted them to wear a dress or a skirt. So gender stereotypes.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Because I would argue that slacks are usually more conservative.
Yeah, that's so silly. I mean, we're going to get that silly, forcing women to wear skirts and dresses. Yeah, that is way archaic. And this person who requires that should just wear like a cod piece because they're living in the medieval ages.
I was going to say, or they could just start wearing a skirt and flashing people for fun and see what's appropriate there.
Deanna's like, no, we need to cut this off right now.
I was like, you want me to wear a skirt? It's really hard to be appropriate sitting down in a skirt sometimes.
Yeah, just a disclaimer, we are not encouraging anyone to flash anyone or be on any registry. So, yeah.
And we're doing this podcast completely sober today. I just thought about it because sometimes I have drinks during the podcast. All right. So that was our first letter. All right. So part 2 for our second letter. It says, I just accidentally eavesdropped on a board meeting where I heard that the executive director is likely going to be let go. I heard them talking about how and when they're going to do it. The ED and I are super close and work in the same office every day. What the fuck do I do now? Should I warn him? Will that get me into trouble somehow for having eavesdropped on that meeting? It's a tiny organization, so they'll likely ask me to cover for him after he's let go. What should I do?
Oh. This is really rough. What do you think?
Oh, you're gonna get tossed it? No. You tossed the last one back to me. You take a stab at this one first.
That's a tricky situation. Although I would probably say if you are an ED, you probably have some inkling that something is going on, and yeah, so the ED probably has some sense that things are not going well. I guess the dilemma right now is like, should this person tell the ED?
Yeah, it sounds like they're close and they've been in the same office space too. So it'd be hard for them to keep it a secret.
I would say, why not? Like, just go ahead. Like, is that wrong? We're not HR people here, right? The board would be like, oh, you can't do that. It's confidential or whatever.
I think that is what the board would say.
Right. But like, why? Is it like an executive session? If so, why is the staff there? I mean, they eavesdrop on this?
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Yeah. I would say go for it.
I would tell, personally.
Yeah.
I don't think I could keep it to myself, especially if I had a relationship with the person. I would tell.
Yeah. I would say, no. We probably will get into trouble with HR people who are like, no, you need to like, this will cause liabilities for the organization or for the board. But I think so much of our sector is like based on these unwritten rules that we uphold for no reason.
Also, one of my takeaways as I'm talking to you about this is maybe that they shouldn't be writing letters into you and me specifically.
Yeah. We're terrible.
We're terrible. We're rule breakers, apparently.
Tell your ED, then launch a mutiny. Remove all the board members. This is assuming that the ED is actually a really good ED and not just like a really horrible ED who really should be fired. There's some racist ass EDs who really should go.
But there's also like, I think the hard part with the ED position is that it's impossible to make everybody happy.
Yes, that's true.
And so sometimes the job itself is just so impossible, and one mistake can lead to somebody getting fired. So I'm like, both scenarios are true, but typically if your ED is horrible, there will be other signs that your ED is horrible. You won't find out about it at a board meeting.
Right. It seems this person is conflicted because they like their ED.
Right.
Because if they weren't, they'd probably be celebrating and just waiting, with like the little finger like intertwined, like waiting for the ED to get fired and then take over. But apparently they don't want to do that because this ED is probably a pretty good boss. And so they're conflicted about So I would say if you actually really like the ED and you think that it would be a mistake to fire them, then I would probably say maybe giving them a warning so they can try to course correct or figure out how to stop from getting fired.
Do you think that in a situation like that, the staff should speak up to the board?
I would probably say, yeah. I mean, right now it doesn't seem like it's a big, like it's only one person, or another small staff. But I think, boards, I mean, I talk about boards all the time, how ineffective they are and oftentimes completely useless and oftentimes destructive to missions. And why wouldn't they be? They're like a group of people who see 1% of the work and who are given vast power over the organization, including the ED or CEO and the staff, which makes very little sense. So they make mistakes all the time. They hire terrible people and they fire really good people. So unless the board has a track record of actually making some very good decisions in the past, then I'm not sure they can be trusted with some of these major decisions here. And I think we also need to get out of this mindset that the board is the only entity that should be having the final say or the majority say in the hiring and firing of EDs. Why should they? Like, that's a tradition that we passed down.
Yeah. And I like even thinking to my organization, if I look at the bylaws, that's exactly what it says. Like, that's the power of the board, and that's their only hiring and firing power is the ED.
Right. And I think in some ways that could be good, but it doesn't need to necessarily be so black and white. Yeah. My last organization, for example, the staff asked for like a 50-50 partnership with the board in hiring the ED or the co-EDs. And the board was very upset. And the consultant that they hired to guide with the process was also very upset and thought that the staff were trying to launch a mutiny because they wanted to have an equal say with the board in who to hire. And I think that is also very archaic.
It's very interesting because my experience in going through ED processes is a lot of times I don't even get asked the right questions to know whether I'm competent at my job or not. So like, how do you assess that? You're not even asking me the right questions. So I agree with that. I think I have a toss up though, right? Because I also think that the staff sometimes, like, we're a 150 person organization. So if we went through a search tomorrow,
right?
Like, how do you take in 150 voices? And also so many people just have such a small view of what the job is. Yeah. But I do absolutely think, and like, for example, in my situation, the opinion of the executive team should be considered? Because they're the ones running all the day-to-day operations, and they would know how big the impact would be.
Well, yeah, but I think I'm advocating for the move beyond just consideration of people's opinions.
Yeah.
Into a process where board and staff are working to hire someone that would make sense for the organization, someone or someone's. But why wouldn't the staff have an equal say in who gets hired? I mean, they're the ones working most closely with the ED on a daily basis.
But I guess my question would be what level of staff? Because for me, somebody who's frontline may not necessarily have as much insight as like I said, an executive team member. Right now, the way that we run our hiring too is that any executive team member can veto another executive team member coming on. So it's not just my direct report, it's their team member. So they absolutely can say no to somebody. They can say yes or no to somebody that they feel strongly about as well. They're part of the hiring process. So I would say that opinion at a very minimum would matter.
I agree. Mm-hmm. And this, frontline staff's opinions can also be taken into consideration by some sort of broad survey about what sort of leader they want to see at the organization, what sort of values that they look forward to this leader having. Yeah. I think we kind of got away from the original question, which is, tell your ED.
Tell your ED. And it looks like we're getting at tell your ED and advocate for a better process with the board.
Yes. Because, no one should be surprised by this. I mean, there should be lots of evaluation and check-ins already with the ED. No ED should be surprise, you've been terrible and we need to fire you now. That's
also,
terrible
I will
management.
tell you, one of the most traumatizing stories I've read was actually on the ED happy hour group.
Ooh.
Where somebody talked about, I can't remember the exact numbers, so I'm guesstimating right now, but they talked about taking their organization from, I believe, a $2 million to a $6 million.
Yeah.
And their board firing them because they had no experience in leading a $6 million organization. So they wanted to bring a new ED on.
Oh, my God.
to take over. And so I was traumatized. I was like, so you're responsible for growing this org. And now your board is like, you don't have the experience to continue to manage this. Let me get rid of you.
That is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. There needs to be a movement. Crappy board practices. Well, we call out boards publicly.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that was our second letter. Do you want to do the long one now?
Sure.
All right. So kicking off for our third letter. So this one's pretty long. So let's see. Let's see how good my reading skills are for this amount of time. I've been working at my nonprofit for the last 2 years. When I first started, I thought the organization was ahead of other nonprofits because they were paying $62,000 for a manager role. After my first year, the organization released salary ranges that were benchmarked against the Illinois Survey of Nonprofit Salaries collected by HR Source. The salary range for my manager role then had a range starting from 59 to 88. The leadership represented this range in salary as an opportunity for people to earn more money without being pushed into leadership. It also meant that someone could stay in a manager role for 10 plus years and continue to earn more money. Fast forward to my second year, and the organization wants to promote me to a director position. My manager calls me to tell me the good news as we approach our new fiscal year and shares the starting salary with me. It turns out that the new director salary benchmark and range were lower from the previous year. It went from $76,000, the range being from 76 to 114. It was lowered to 71 to 106. So did you follow that? Do I need to repeat it?
I think I followed that, yeah.
So, all right. When asked why I was being offered a lower range that was made than what was made public a year ago, I was told that they were re-benchmarking salaries for the new fiscal year, and the amount I was being offered was a new starting salary for a director. I decided to speak up and voice my disappointment on how all the news was being communicated. I was told I was being promoted without knowing what the new salary ranges and did not receive a description or offer letter to sign preceding the big news being made public to the organization. After voicing my concern to my supervisor, I received a long-winded email from our ED that explained why the salary ranges were being re-benchmarked, because the previous ranges were not sustainable for the org. They also realized that a director title was not commensurate with director responsibilities. They are still referencing the same HR report at this point, saw that the work that our directors, in quotations, were doing is more aligned with manager elsewhere. However, while the salary ranges went down for our now $2.5 million operating budget, the executive director salary went up and increased. So the previous range was 104 to 156. And the new range is 148 to 221 for the ED.
Wow.
So the irony is that our newest strategic plan has it written down that they want to promote people of color into leadership. Our ED said explicitly in a team meeting that this was an intentional move based on equity. And so having that we have POC in the room to call other leaders on any oversight or blind spot, not realizing that this is an additional emotional labor for myself and my peers who are being promoted alongside me. I have spoken up about the disappointment I feel, and it has been 2 weeks since I received the news of my promotion, but still do not have an offer letter or a job description to reference. Curious to hear your thoughts and reactions.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if this organization actually understands what equity means here. Right? That just seems like all sorts of levels of shadiness. One, promoting someone without making sure that they're aware they're actually going into a lower band. Right? That should have been communicated. And that should have been very transparent from the onset. Like, if I were this person, I might not even want to be promoted at this point. Right? Then also, like, lowering everyone's pay salary bands because it's unsustainable, but then increasing the ED. Like, that seems, I mean, I'm all for leaders and people just making decent wages here.
Yeah.
But I don't like it when EDs make way more than line staff or other staff at the organization. So that is definitely a sign of inequity, or the lack of understanding of equity is when the top leader just makes greatly more while everyone else may be underpaid.
For clarification, what does greatly more mean to you?
I don't know. I mean, we talk about like a ratio. I think Ben and Jerry's has a ratio like 5 to 1, where the ED should not make more than 5 times more.
That's unheard of in corporate.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but I'm like, corporate is, I think the average, I don't even remember. Xavier
like
told me
20 or 30
it's something
or 300.
ridiculous. Yeah.
But in nonprofit, I don't know. Like, I probably wouldn't feel comfortable making more than like 3 times more than
that's our cap, is 3 times the lowest paid.
Yeah.
And for me too, the cap is also an understanding that as a baseline, we have to pay a livable wage to everybody. And so it's not like some folks are making $40K while I'm making 6 figures, right? Like, start with the minimum or livable wage for everybody. And then we could talk about my salary specifically as an ED.
Absolutely. And maybe we need to get away from this idea that like the ED is the one who makes the most amount of money. Like, at my last organization, like I was the ED and I was not making the highest salary because there was someone who had more experience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we need to start thinking about equity-based pay. And more organizations are starting to move into flatter hierarchies, co-directorship or shared diffuse responsibility and power. And the salaries may be more compressed to be more equitable. And then there might be some consideration, like, as you know, if you are a single parent or you're a caregiver with aging parents, that you may need more, because I think we have to acknowledge that too. So everyone getting the same pay may not be equitable either. If you don't have any kids, you know, and then another coworker has like 3 small children and aging parents that they have to care for. So I think we have to kind of be thoughtful about like the ratio, but also like what do people actually need to survive and thrive.
One of the ways that we try to address it is through our benefits.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to contribute to a dependent care account for situations like that. We also have like education reimbursement for those who need to go to school or are paying back student loans. And so like we try to make up some of these gaps through all of these other benefits so that people who need them can take advantage of them, as opposed to trying to revisit the entire compensation structure. Because I think it starts to get really into weeds to be like, well, you have 3 kids, therefore you need more money, but their partner might be making significantly more money, or you have 1 child, but you don't have any help at home, you know? Right. So like so that's why we do it through the benefits, and then people could access it. So I do agree. For me, this letter just doesn't sit well just off of what it says. I cannot imagine increasing my salary that significantly and then lowering everybody else's within the organization. That's wild to me. But also the fact that it got announced without this person's accepting of the
Yeah,
role.
that's very shady.
Mm-hmm.
And now, several weeks later, and still no offer letter.
Mm-hmm.
That's amateur.
And announcing promotions or talking about the need to promote folks of color so that leadership can be called out on blind spots. Called out in my quotations.
Yeah, it just seems really gross. It's all around. I hope this organization understands, because we do this a lot. We lose really good staff because of like terrible. Like I was talking about nonprofit math, how we just do terrible sort of like like equations and calculations in our sector. For example, one of my friends, a development director, she asked for a $5,000 raise, and because she had been way underpaid. And the organization's like, oh no, we just don't have, we can't make it work for the budget. So she quit. And they tried to hire someone, but no one would no one would accept that pay. She was like this rock star development director. And so they had to increase the salary by like $10,000 or $15,000 just to get someone in. And now, of course, this person is way less experienced than the previous person who had been a rock star. We do this all the time.
Yeah.
So they could lose this really great staff if they are not careful with their shenanigans and all this stuff here.
Yeah. I would advise the person to look for another job personally. But I always tell people, I was like, just find another job. If you don't like it, just find another job. There's no reason to be unhappy.
I agree. I mean, if they're going to pull this type of stuff, then yeah, it's only fair if you start going to try to find some other position that would pay you better and would treat you with more respect. I think it's not just that the salary itself, it's the lack of respect and transparency. That's like serious red flags for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That one. Ugh. The only thing I struggle with, I will say this, because like I said, I love telling people to just find another job. And if I could hire everybody, I would. Because I'm constantly want to just be like, I swear to God, it's better here. Let me hire you, but I can't. The only thing that sometimes I worry about when I tell people to just find another job is that I feel like more nonprofits are like this than not still. I don't feel like enough nonprofits are doing the right thing still.
Oh, no. We have, I think, over decades of scarcity and martyrdom and lack of funding means that a lot of nonprofits are in the survival mode where it's very scrappy. We sit on crappy chairs that we duct tape together, right?
Right. That's the
name of the
podcast.
Exactly. And it's not just applicable to chairs. It's applicable to compensation and investment in staff, professional development, etc. And we need to get out of it because it's not helpful to our work.
All right. So that was our third letter. Let me see how we're doing on time. Okay. We could do wait. I want to read both of them because I don't think I want to do all of them. So let me just read.
Meeting has been canceled. I'm going to keep doing more ASMR, We're switching to 4-day work weeks.
Keep repeating that one.
The gala has been canceled.
Actually, I think they're both interesting. So let's do the next one. All right. Can we also just release clips of Vule's ASMR here? Have that playing in the background before the next board meeting? Just sink in. All right. So for our next letter, a new person of color was just hired at my organization. Their name is very hard to pronounce. During an all-staff meeting, one of the directors made everyone in the room pronounce this person's name, all together and multiple times. When I looked over at the newbie, I could see that they were dying inside of humiliation. Is there anything I can do to make this better? Should I report it to the director of HR for this microaggression? For reference, I'm white, and the director who did this is half Black, though white passing, if that matters.
Ooh, I think this is when we talk about intention versus impact.
Yeah.
Because I am sure that this person means well, trying to force everyone to repeat this new colleague's name. They were trying to be helpful. And people really do need to practice saying names, but maybe not to do that in front of everyone, in front of this person.
Single them out in that way.
Single them out, yeah. So that's the sort of intention, was to try to make this person feel welcome and that everyone gets their name right, which is admirable. But yeah, I would be mortified if I were in that room and all the attention is on me. Especially, I don't know, like there's a lot of people who are shy or who are introverts and they do not like being the center of attention.
Absolutely.
So the impact is it can be really rough. I'm not so sure it escalates to the level of reporting on HR though. I don't know. What are your thoughts
I feel
on that?
like it could be a conversation with that person.
Yeah.
Also, depending on how this person carries their identities, they may not be willing to hear that from a white person. So I think that that's another interesting, because normally my recommendation would be just talk to the person directly on how that landed. But we start to get into this, and I've seen this in the workplace where white folks feel the need to be the spokesperson for people of color, and people of color have to say, I can speak for myself and I can defend myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this I think is really tricky in terms of the layers of it.
Yeah, I like the idea of trying to at least give this person the opportunity to receive some feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And because they may want to do this, they think they did something really nice, and maybe there's another colleague in the future, and they need to really understand that was not really appropriate to do. They could go personally and check in on everyone and just saying, hey, just want to make sure that you're okay with pronouncing this new colleague's name. Is that okay? Right? But not like do it in a like all staff meeting.
Yeah.
But again, I do think that maybe we do tend to get really easily escalating things when we should just really need to be more communicative and better at giving feedback. Our sector is kind of bad at giving feedback and receiving it.
I think it's back to your earlier point about being conflict avoidance.
Yes.
I was talking about this at lunch too, that like, first of all, there's a lot of trauma in the sector and not enough therapy for it, apparently.
No.
But I think folks have a hard time reconciling that a person can be a good person and do something fucked up. So like automatically if you do something fucked up, then you're a terrible person.
Right.
And so that makes it both difficult to give feedback or to receive it, because obviously if you give me negative feedback, then you're telling me I'm a horrible person.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if I give you terrible feedback, then you're going to think that I think you're a horrible person. And so then we don't address it at all.
I think that's the reason why racism has been so pervasive, is because if anyone points out, hey, you did something that was kind of racist, then you're like, I'm not a racist.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like, I don't know, with parenting, it's like you try to focus on the behavior, you don't focus on the person, right?
Right.
You say, oh, I did not appreciate that you, whatever, spilled coffee or like on my laptop or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't say, oh, you're a bad kid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we need to. You're right. I agree that we conflate feedback with the person. You are not your feedback. This is one of the lessons I learned in feedback training is you're not your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback is just one person's experience of you and your actions. And so, we need to focus on the behavior and not the people when we're addressing feedback, So I say we do need to do just a way better job. So talking to this colleague and saying, hey, I appreciate what you were trying to do, but here's the way it landed. Mm-hmm. And maybe what are your thoughts on this? And if they have any sort of awareness, they may go and apologize to this person So, but maybe we need to do that. We need to have more feedback and let's just everyone is a bad person who makes a mistake, because we all make mistakes all the time.
And I think the one piece I want to add to what you're saying too is I think that all the trauma also makes folks inflate people's behavior. So like, you did this one thing and now you're a terrible person because my experience has taught me that people that do this one thing are terrible people. Therefore, you are now a terrible person. And so like that is another piece of it. That's why I was like, I don't think there's enough therapy in this sector to address some of this.
There's not. We can talk in another episode when I come back about psychedelic mushrooms and, because that's just a way more efficient form of therapy sometimes. But I'm not so sure. Do we have sponsors here? I don't want to.
We don't have sponsors, which is great because we can speak freely.
Right. No, you're right. I mean, everyone here is traumatized. And I think just to be serious for a moment, like our traumas are one of the reasons, maybe consciously or unconsciously, that push us to doing this work. Mm-hmm. But then we get more traumatized and then we don't really address the trauma that we've been carrying.
Mm-hmm.
And then we add more trauma thanks to compassion, like secondary trauma that we have. So, yeah, there's a lot of people here. And it manifests in different ways. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's when sometimes, and this happens where if you didn't have that trauma, someone making a mistake, you'd be like, oh, they made a mistake.
Right,
and
exactly.
Let me talk to them and give them some feedback. Whereas if you're traumatized, and you're like, oh no, this is what happened last time, that someone did something like this. They're a terrible person and they try to ruin my life, and this new person will probably do the same thing, and etc. So we're all traumatized. I think that's what our point is.
We're all traumatized. Talk to the person. Assume good intentions.
Assume good intention within reason.
Within reason.
Right? If they don't try to change, if they don't really acknowledge, then yeah, it may need to be escalated at some point.
Mm-hmm. If they continue in this kind of behavior.
Right. But give people a chance to change.
Mm-hmm. All right. Last but not least, I've been asked at my job to do more than is my original job description. Basically, I've been asked to find items for our annual gala's silent auction. I am not about to devote my free time to something that frankly should be the board or the host committee's job. Can I negotiate for a pay raise in order to do this? If not, how do I say no without getting fired? That's our other job duties as required that we sneak into everybody's job description.
Oh, yeah. This one is, I think this one is a little tricky.
Yeah.
Because I think on one hand, we are asked to do all sorts of things all the time in this sector. And this idea that we all wear multiple hats, I dislike it.
Mm-hmm.
I would just like to wear one hat really well.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we're juggling multiple different hats and just getting tired and burnt out all the time. And this is one of the reasons, is because we get asked to do random ass stuff. And I think also as people of color, we get asked to join DEI committees, to lead.
Oh my God, I hate DEI committees. Don't get me started.
Right. For free.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have so much time. Why
For
don't you
free
join
with
this
no
committee?
real decision-making power.
Exactly. And the CEO or the ED is not really there joining that committee. So then you're just proposing solutions that will then be vetoed oftentimes.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really terrible. And I think that type of work really needs to be compensated. You're going to ask a person of color to do additional DEI type of work, then yeah, they absolutely need to be compensated for that labor. Now, fundraising, first of all, galas are generally terrible.
So we don't do galas because I think they're generally terrible. But
yeah,
yes.
Galas, silent auctions. I mean, I don't want to just jump onto the gala hating bandwagon all the time. I think for a lot of communities of color, marginalized communities, these events are not just about raising money. They are about building community and so on. So they serve an important point. But at the same time, many of them are just done so wrong, and the math doesn't really add up when you're spending $80,000 in staff time to raise $50,000.
So many folks don't calculate the staff time, though, in their net.
Yeah, that is inaccurate. They really need to be calculating staff time. But now, if everyone has to go about doing this, I don't know. If you're going to put on a gala anyways, then it really is kind of all hands on deck.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I think if this person is singled out to be doing this and no one else is, then that is a problem. But if the entire organization is like, hey, everyone needs to go and find auction items or whatever, then I don't know. I'm less against it because it's just awful for everyone now.
I would also just ask this person, have you tried negotiating what's on your to-do list? Because somebody might be like, yeah, don't do that A, B, and C and just focus on this.
That's great advice, Bessie. Be like, yeah, I can do this. I can go and spend the next 5 hours a week trying to find auction items. But that means, which of these would you like me to drop?
Exactly.
Right.
Because it's not possible to do all of this. And I will say that even as somebody who's a bit of an asshole at times, when people come to me like that and you show me everything at once, I'm like, all right, you really don't have to do this one because I really need you to do this one.
Right. Write a Gantt chart of all your tasks and the deadline, and just present and be like, which one of these tasks do you want me to drop so I can find a basket of wine or something?
Right. Mm-hmm. That would be my go-to in a situation like that, because chances are you're not going to get a raise just because you have to find some auction items.
There's leftover wine at the fundraising. I'm going back to my ASMR.
That's going to be, I'm telling you, we're just going to release an episode of Wulei's ASMR for folks.
Oh, it's on Instagram. I already had 2 parts of it. Yeah, I think I'm going to do part 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Free Palestine. ASMR.
All right. That was it for our letters. So thank you for answering questions, Lizzie.
Thank you. That was way more fun than I thought. Next time, we're going to talk about dating advice for nonprofit professionals. All right. Send in your letters.
I'm encouraging Wulei to start a matchmaking service. Send in your letters in support of Wulei starting a
I'm going to
matchmaking
match
service.
nonprofit leaders with foundation people.
Oh my God. Are you
Yeah.
trying to start like a wave of divorces? Can you imagine?
No, we should probably have like more shows. You know?
Can we have a mixer? A dating mixer for the field?
Oh, that's a great idea.
I think we should totally do that. I feel like
Yeah.
we should release this clip and ask for a vote.
A dating mixer.
Yeah.
But I don't know because I wrote a blog post with like cardinal rules about dating in the nonprofit sector. And then rule number 1 is you can't date another person in the nonprofit sector.
You totally can.
No, because our mission is to alleviate poverty, not to reinforce it.
To broke people?
No, if you are dating someone who's from the nonprofit sector, one of you needs to quit nonprofit and become like an oil tycoon or
Right.
something, like a supermodel.
But that actually goes away if we do your philanthropy idea. Philanthropy people are paid way better than us. So if you pair with philanthropy
that's
with
what
a
I mean.
nonprofit. Yeah.
Partner a nonprofit person with a foundation program officer or something.
I totally, and we could do a little checklist to make sure that they're not a grantee of the foundation.
We should have an app, and it's called Funder. It's we match nonprofit people with foundation people. You just swipe left. Oh, this person gives multi-year term operating funds. Swipe. Swipe.
All right, folks, thank you for listening. Let us know if you want us to bring Wulei back or if she should be banned from Chicago.
I mean, why wouldn't you? Look at this sexy voice. Can't believe how sexy it is.
Keep up with everything going on at Alternatives or to donate, you can visit us at our website, alternativesyouth.org. You can also follow us at Alternatives Inc. on Instagram or at Alternatives Youth on Facebook. If you want to keep up with Bessie, you can follow her on Instagram and TikTok at Bessie_Alcantara. Thanks for listening.